Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. I have been working on the van for the past couple days. I'll put some pictures in throughout here as I go, just to show you some of the steps I've done. I painted the outside, um, so I've got some pictures of that, mainly the driver's side and the roof and the back. And the reason I did that is I have a uh, roof rack that I need to put on, and I wanted it painted before I did that. And the only reason I painted it, I just rattle canned it because I needed, there's some spots the clear coat was peeling and I wanted to get those covered up. So I sanded it and painted it, and it's actually turned out fairly decent. One thing I also want to mention real quick, fortunately I didn't have an issue, but it is something that I haven't heard many people address that you definitely should, especially if you're going to be staying in the van overnight, which why would you not if you're building a bed, right? But just in general, even when you're working on it, as you can see up there, I have a new fire extinguisher. That will be the general area that it will be in once the build is done, but it probably won't be right there. And then I also have one back here. This one is ABC all-purpose. That one is a vehicle-specific one, so it is just BC, I believe. I had to grind a couple stuck bolts out of here and was throwing sparks everywhere, and I had the red fire extinguisher, but it wasn't in a bracket. It wasn't easy to get to, and that was kind of a no-no on my part. I was careful and I didn't set anything on fire, but it's always good to have it there. So as you can see, I have the van stripped out, including I pulled the headliner out. I rolled up all the cables, as you can see up there behind the driver's seat. I'm going to remount the rear controls for the rear AC, and then in one of the panels by the seat. And then I also have the majority of the side panels tore out. I'm not sure where I'm going to cut that one by the front window yet, just because I want to leave the part by the driver's door, but I want the rest of it gone. So that one is a bit of a... Actually, I may cut it. I may end up cutting it back here by this back window and leaving it around that window. I'm not sure yet. So anyway, that's what that is. Headliner's pulled out. My headliner was trashed, as you can see up here. This is the silver stuff is fat mat, and I got that all put in last night. I had to cut it, put it in the house by the heater vent, let it warm up really good, and then this was out in the sun yesterday, so the roof wasn't as cold. It's only about 40 degrees right now, and so this stuff supposedly has issues sticking once it gets too cold. But it was about 45 degrees outside, but the roof was in the sun, and I just wiped it all down with acetone, let it dry for an hour or so, and then rolled that on, and they all seem to have stuck really well. I did go for a short drive, and with all the flooring out of here and the roof or the headliner out, it was even more of a big echo chamber than before. And just those pieces on the ceiling, which it's a bit of overkill, but I forgot. A bunch of people said how much it took them in order to do their vans. They had cargo vans, they didn't have windows, so these big window areas were big metal panes that they covered, and I don't have that. So the kit I bought is like 100 square feet, and I used not even half of it to do all the ceiling, so I'm gonna have a bunch left over, I believe. So I will show you what I did on the floor. So we'll have a bunch of glare here. It looks like ET's building. So as you can see, this part here is Reflectix. That's on the high parts of the floor. And then this, I took a picture or two, so I'll put that in. This is 1/2 inch or 7/16 plywood, just like this is. I took 2 sheets and cut down the pieces I need for back here, and then I took and ripped 2-inch strips, and I put those in the low channels, which is here, and it raised it just slightly below or above the high part. And so what I did is I glued those down, and everybody talks about the Silka stuff, which Silka Flex I use in a lot of stuff. I actually use this Power Grab Ultimate. It's kind of an all-purpose adhesive. The 0-second instant grab isn't entirely true, but it does grip pretty quick, and it works in all conditions. I believe down to like 45 degrees. And it works for marine applications that are not completely submerged. So probably not as good as like the Silka stuff, but this you can get on Amazon, but you can also get it just at Lowe's or Home Depot. Then I've used it for a bunch of other projects, and it grabs really well. Up there's a tube that I had left of Liquid Nails Fuse It, which works as well. I do prefer the Loctite Power Grab. So I put that on the back of all the panels. I chose to use OSB versus plywood for the floor. I'll use plywood on the cabinets and such. I used OSB because screws grab it a little better than plywood, just because it's more consistent. And OSB, if you use it right after you get it, it's perfectly flat, and then if you fasten it down, it stays that way, whereas plywood can tend to bow over time if it's not secured. So and OSB is generally a little cheaper, and everything's going to be just screwed into this, and it's all going to get covered in vinyl, so no one's ever going to see it anyway. So that being said, if you work with OSB, there's a piece right here. There's a rough side and there's a smooth side, and you can kind of use that to your advantage. So on the strips I cut down, I put the rough side down because it gives a little bit better surface for the glue to stick to. Most your glues want one surface to be porous, and the metal isn't porous, so it sticks real well to that. And then when I did my actual top floor, I put the rough side up because I'll get into it in the video when I do the flooring. I'm using a roll-on glue that's a pressure sensitive glue, and I wanted it to be able to soak up as much of the glue as possible when I put the vinyl down. So I did the ribs rough side down so the glue stuck better, and I do this rough side up because it'll get glued on this side. So back to what I did here. When I glued these down, then I took and cut a strip of Reflectix to go in the middle here. And I know Reflectix on its own, you can see a piece of it here. Some people see it as like the van insulation do-all be-all, but it's not. Bob Wells has a great video on insulation, and One Awesome Inch talks about it. The truth of the matter is, unless you want to get 2 inches of flooring and put a real buildup of insulation under there with polyiso or something, you're not going to insulate your floor real well. And this is not a high top, and I'm 6'3", and I want to be able to sit on my bed and not be crunched over, and so I need to keep as much space as possible, and I didn't want to raise my floor up 2 or 3 inches in order to do that. So this is kind of a bare minimum floor. If I had a high top, one that I could stand in, and because of where I travel, it does get cold, I would do probably 1.5 inches of polyiso on the floor, and then do this over it. But again, for this application and the size, it just wasn't practical. So this does kind of two things. It does add a little bit of insulation. I don't know what the R value is. It's negligible. But it will keep heat from escaping as quick, and it will keep cold from transferring right up from the metal floor through to the wood. I can tell a difference touching the metal versus touching the wood. The wood is already warmer even without the heater running, and so that's what I did. I didn't really do a video on how the floor goes in because there's a bunch of them out there, And there's so many different ways to do a floor. So mine basically, like I said, put in those 1/2 inch strips. They were 2 inches wide, 1/2 inch thick. Glued them down, and then these I countersunk. I use the same screws here. They're 3/4 inch lath screws. And I countersunk them first with my countersink bit and then drilled them down in. On the E350, I got underneath and looked, and there was nothing that was right up against the body on the bottom back where I was going to be. I did not want to put a bunch of screws through the floor, but I also didn't want to wait for forever for the liquid or the adhesive to set up to screw those down. So it was kind of a toss-up. I ended up putting a few screws in those boards going up and down the joists. And I am pretty happy now with how the floor feels. There's no give to it. It's really solid. And when I was driving around, I didn't hear any squeaks or anything like that. I don't have it all screwed down yet. I'll do a screw about every 6 inches into those ribs I put down. Same thing, you see the countersink and the impact gun I was using to put those down. There is a bit of a gap, as you can see right here. They're tight, but this isn't down all the way because this part is not screwed down yet. So that will be done shortly. The only other thing I have to figure out is my AC back here. When I turn the heat on, I believe the front part, this part, is controlled by the front controller. And then this, the part that went out the top, is controlled by the rear. And I don't know if that blower isn't working or what's going on, but something weird's going on. I never get anything coming out that top part. And so I've got to figure out what's going on with that before I bother building a cabinet around it. And something to consider too is how easy it will be to get that in and out if I ever have to pull it out to fix it. There are some people that take that completely out, but it would be nice to have the extra heat and cool back here. So anyway, yeah, the other reason I did this right away is I do drive around and use this for work, and I didn't want it to be a rattle trap and an echo chamber all the time. And so I went ahead and put that up. Eventually there will be polyiso foam right here, and so there will probably be Reflectix up in the actual ribs here, right here up against the ceiling, and then right here there will be probably 1/2 inch or 1 inch polyiso between the ribs, just to make sure that I can keep as much heat as possible in. The windows are going to get tinted blacked out, and so then they won't let out as much heat either. So yeah, one thing after another. I went ahead, and the only other seats that are going to be in the back is I did buy out of a transit van some reclining buckets, and they're going to go sideways up against that window right there, and they have built-in seat belts. The only thing I did not think about is that is above my gas tank, and in order to mount those I'm probably going to have to drop the gas tank, so that'll be fun, but it's got to get done. Anyway, I have to cut one more piece, as you can see, of the plywood. I am going to go ahead, and since I'm cutting down on the size and I have a slider door, build my platform out and only leave probably a 3-foot step over there, so that I can have a little more cabinet space. My plan right now is there will be 2 seats right there, and they go to about where that bump is for the gas filler, which I don't know why Ford did that. There's a way to save space that would have been easier to do that, but whatever. And then from that point back, this will all be a cabinet top about the level of the window. And then where I am sitting now on the current wheel well, will be the bed. So I'm over 6 foot. The bed I got is exactly 6 foot. It's a short queen memory foam mattress that I cut. So 2/3 of it is going to be directly above the wheel well towards me. The other third of it is going to be the back of a couch, basically, and it will go up above the windows. So it can be used as a couch, or then it could fold flat and come right up to these cabinets and be a bed, a full-size, well, a short queen. That layout, where with the bed on one side and the cabin on the other, is a good way to use space. I've seen from One Awesome Inch's videos especially, he's done a few vans that are laid out that way that he's able to use quite well, because if you can't stand up in it, you can sit on that side. And then the other nice thing will be, I'll have, you know, a couple people could sit on that, a couple people could sit over there in those two captain's chairs, or reclining buckets. And then I am going to put swivels. I already got the swivels. I just have to do different holes for them on the front seats. So that is what I kind of have done so far. It has made a difference in heat, and it has made a difference in sound. Definitely having this down on the floor. The mat that came out had kind of a nasty fabric backing on it. So it kept out some of the noise, but now this takes the place of that. But again, it doesn't provide a ton of insulation for your floor. However, it does provide some. The other thing it does do is provide a vapor barrier and a thermal break, which I taped all the seams, and I taped the top of the wood with foil tape. That is not the most cost-effective way to do it, but because of what I do for work, I always end up with that stuff left over. I probably use 2 rolls of tape, and they're about 15 bucks a roll in here. So they're not cheap, but like I said, it does provide that thermal break between the cold metal floor and everything coming up from the floor, or the heat coming up from the ground in the summer to your floor. Going forward, I haven't unrolled it yet. As soon as I do, I'll put a picture up for you guys. I got it's an acacia wood print vinyl flooring. It's Traffic Master, so it's not the cheap vinyl. It's a heavy duty, like industrial vinyl, designed to hold up in commercial applications and rentals. And that's what I'm going to do on the floor, just so it's all one piece. I was originally going to do Pergo, and again, the height difference it made just made me decide not to do it. One other thing. So again, I built the ribs out of this, which is basically 1/2 inch OSB, the 2-inch ribs that I put on the floor, and then this is also what I put on top. So basically I have 1 inch on the ribs and then just this 1/2 inch, but they're only 2 inches apart. So like I said, you don't feel the flex in the floor. However, looking back, if I was going to do it again, I would give up the 1/4 inch, and I would still do this as the ribs in the floor, but then I would use 3/4 inch board on the flooring for the flat part, just because it would be a little more rigid and it would hold screws and stuff even better, because you could have almost an inch to drill, or over an inch to drill into. Right now, depending on how I fasten things to the floor, I'm not worried about it. It's not going to be a problem, but people talk about, they'll put their floor down and they won't even put any screws into it, and they say, well, we're going to build our cabinets and that's going to hold it down. You got to remember too that unfortunate as it is, your van can end up upside down, and if things aren't fastened properly, those things could end up on your head. And I ran a towing company for years and saw what happens in wrecks, and it's just not something I want to risk. So you definitely want to attach those down. The other thing too, you can see a piece of that fat mat back in there. I am going to cut some small pieces to go back inside there. It'll just cut down on the noise of the panels moving, and then that's all going to be insulated inside those cavities before everything goes down. After I decide which side to put everything on, I'll go over that. I haven't decided yet where I'm going to put the 3 big batteries that I have and my fuse panel. I've got a combo AC/DC fuse panel and a couple other things for electrics that I got to put in. So I will do an update again once I kind of get those going, and we'll go from there. So until next time, guys, have a great one. If you got any questions, put them in the comments below, or ideas. I will put this up pretty much probably tonight, so this will be about where I'm at on the van. So if you have any suggestions or ideas, I can take them into consideration. I'd appreciate it. Till next time, have a great one.